9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, welcome back to the Rising Coaches podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Lucio Sports. Lucio Sports has everything to take care of your coaching staff from the technology side. Everything you do with your team, your staff, your entire program is integrated into their suite of apps. You can check it out at luciosports.com. They do everything, including animated play diagrams, which you see NBA coaches using in timeouts at the huddles. This year, you saw a few college programs. They were doing it at Memphis, who I think is still alive. And even some of our members at the high school level were using it in timeouts. It's a great app. It saves you from having to scribble all kinds of crazy lines on your whiteboard. And it really is a game changer. And if you sign up for Rising Coaches right now, at risingcoaches.com, you get a free license to their app. So it's a no-brainer. In addition to all the value you get with being a part of the Rising Coaches family, you also get Lucio Sports for free. So check it out, luciosports.com, or sign up for a Rising Coaches membership today and get your free access to Lucio. All right. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Very excited for our guest, Montez Robinson. Montez, good morning, man. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we got a lot to talk about today. And you were most recently at UT Martin. Unbelievably difficult situation there, which we'll get into shortly. And of course, talk about Coach Stewart and the legacy that he left there at UT Martin. But before we get into that, let's kind of dig into your journey a little bit leading up to that. We met on the road in Mississippi. I spent some time at Mississippi State. When I was at SEMO, we recruited Mississippi quite a bit. And at the time, you were the head coach at Alcorn State.
Most definitely, yeah.
And so we would always be at the same JUCO gyms and things like that. Because that Mississippi JUCO league is a little underrated. You can always sneak a player or two out of there.
Yeah, you can definitely find some in Mississippi. You can definitely. It's a very untapped area of talent, of athletes in Mississippi.
Yeah, and some great high school coaches as well, and grassroots coaches. They really love basketball in that state. But Tez, I don't know like where you were at before you were the head coach at Alcorn. Tell me a little bit about like your coaching journey.
Well, my journey actually started at my alma mater at North Georgia. I got hurt my senior year, and Coach Dunn ended up saying, "Well, just stay on the sideline. You've been a coach on the court for so long. Let's go ahead and get you started into it." And when I went to North Georgia, I told him from the beginning when I was in school, I want to be a college coach. So he just got me started into that a little bit early. My first really coaching job was at Truett McConnell with Alan Sharp. We took over a program that had won 8 games the previous 2 years, and we had back-to-back 3 years where we won 20 games in a row. And at that time, Truett McConnell, we had some really good players, and Tony Ingle, the late Tony Ingle, was coming over up. He was at Kennesaw State, and he was recruiting us really heavy. We had a big kid by the name of B.J. Puckett, and they were just coming off a 25-winning season. And it was the year going into that national championship year that Kennesaw won. And at that time, they did so well. They won the national championship, did so well. Jeff Jones left and got the job at Southern Poly. And Coach Ingle just called me right away. He said, "Man, I'm always coming up to Truett McConnell grabbing your players. Would you like to come and be on the staff?" And I was like, "Coach, I'm there. Just tell me when, where, and how soon I need to get there. No problem." And that was my first Division I job. So I was with Coach Ingle. I started out second assistant, worked all the way up to the associate head coach, then eventually became an interim head coach in that situation. I was with Coach for about 6.5 years and was the interim for a half of a year. From there, I went on to Bethune-Cookman. And this was kind of crazy. I ended up taking the Bethune-Cookman job with Gavelle Craig. I actually got a phone interview with Alcorn back in 2011. And one of the reasons I didn't make it to the on-campus portion was because when they looked at the resume, they really got we had the phone interview. They said I had no HBCU experience. And at the time, I was like, I got 11 years of college experience, 7 at Division I level. Why does it matter about the HBCU side of things? And so didn't make it on campus. So I said, Gavelle had a job at Bethune-Cookman opening. I said, well, look, I'm coming down with you. He was like, hey, Tez, I appreciate it. I could really use a guy like you, but why would you want to come here? And I said, I want to make sure that I have no gaps. Whatever job I'm trying to go after, I want to have opportunity to get it. I don't want anybody ever to tell me because I don't have this experience, I haven't been here, haven't recruited anywhere. I don't want any doubt in AD's or administration's mind what I can't do. So I took the job at the HBCU at Bethune-Cookman, and the plans was to be down there for maybe 1 or 2 years, and I ended up staying down there for 4.
It's always the plan,
I really
right?
love working for. What's that?
Everyone always takes a job, man. I'm just going to be here for a year or two and then move on. It never works out like that, does it?
It never works out, and that was really just a breath of fresh air for me. Being down there with one of my best friends. A lot of people say friends can't work together, but it was a joy. And so I ended up staying down there 4 years, and the job came open in 2015 at Alcorn, and I went after it again, and was blessed. God blessed me with the opportunity to go there, and I was there for 5 years. We had 3 out of 5 winning seasons, 100% graduation rate. All of my guys, APR was always fine. I had 9 guys to go play professionally. AJ Mosby got drafted the first round of the G League draft. I mean, it was awesome. We had a good time. Made it to the championship game. Lost to Texas Southern by 3. The year we lost 53-50, and they were averaging 80 some points a game. So the last 3 minutes of the game, it was 49 to like 47. I was like, man, we're going to win this game. We're right here. They averaged 80 points, and we keeping them right up on the 50 where we want. And a couple offensive rebounds away, and they made a couple big threes, and we ended up losing the game by 3. But that's how it goes. Then from there, my contract wasn't renewed after a year of being at Alcorn. Well, we got invited to the CIT, and the pandemic hit. You know, it was going to be the first postseason since 2002 down at Alcorn, and we got invited. We had a winning season, finished 4th in the league, got invited to the CIT, and my contract wasn't renewed. So from there, Anthony Stewart, God rest his soul's best friend, another good friend of mine. He was one of the first guys to reach out. He was like, Tez, don't worry about it. If I got to create a position for you, I'll create something. It may not pay a lot, but who knows? I may have a position open later on in the summer on my staff. So the whole time, you know, I'm looking and searching like most coaches do in that time. There's no Final Four, so you can't really network like you normally do. So you go from there. Then come August, I was actually headed to Poland, actually to coach in their top league overseas as a head coach. And so finally Stu called back and said, man, I have a spot just open. Bill Lewitt left and took a high school job. He's like, man, if you're interested. I said, Coach, we're actually headed to Poland in 3 weeks. He was like, man, just get your wife to come up. I really need your help. You know, I think we got something special here. We can really win some games if we could just keep it together. I know what you do defensively, and I know how you are when it comes to discipline and different things like that. I can really need your help in those areas. And wife came up. She was like, let's do it. It keeps us home. It keeps us, the kids here. So we decided to stay. In 2 months leading up until that situation, Coach Stu passes. I mean, after I get here.
Right. Crazy. Okay, well, let's go back a little bit. I want to unpack some of the stuff we talked about. First of all, so many times we hear about this. Like you mentioned, you had the interview at Alcorn in 2011. You didn't get the job, but 4 years later, the job came open again, and that's when it came. So often we hear about that on this show is people get passed up the first time. But because they handle it well, they don't take it personal. They keep the relationship alive. You know, there's so much turnover in this business. It comes back around for you. Did you make a point to handle it? You know, when you didn't get the job, did you stay in touch with them? Were you in contact with them over the years, or was it really, just reconnecting?
Actually, the story, I mean, we could probably go for an hour on how it all led up until that situation. And to answer your question, really no, because there was so much changing in their administration. They had between 2011 to 2015, they had probably maybe 3 ADs who came through. So they were on, when I took the job at Alcorn, it was, they had the changing with the AD, the compliance officer. The school was on hard times when it came to academics and APR. They were on when I took the job, it was a 4-year postseason ban. So I didn't know anybody. It was just luckily through a little research, a guy by the name of Jason Cable, who was there, which come to find out, me and him, he's from Alabama. I played against him when he was a sophomore. I was a senior in high school. And at that point, he was the assistant athletic director over compliance and academics at Alcorn. So they had already had their 4 candidates. So I just so happened to just email him. I told him who I was. He was like, yeah, I remember you, Tez. I threw him a resume. And he was like, well, we already know who we're going to bring in for the interview. I think you're a little bit late to the table right now. But I'll slide it to the committee. I'll slide it on top of the president's desk just to do you a favor because I know you. So about 2-3 days later, I get a call from Derek Horn, the athletic director there. And he says, this is Derek Horn, and would you be interested in coming down and interviewing for the job at Alcorn? And at this time, let me set it up for you. I'm at a car auction, and you know how loud a car auction is when I answer the phone. Right. And it's, hey, so, you know, at the time I was trying to help one of our seniors get a car. And he wanted a car, and he said, Coach, I got some money. The auction's right down the road. You mind going and just making sure nobody takes advantage of me? I was like, sure, I'll go. So he's on the phone. I'm sitting in the back of the room, and all of a sudden it's, hey, Derek Horn. So I literally was like, oh, guys, I was like, stop kidding. I thought it was somebody joking with one of my friends or somebody just joking. So I hung the phone up because I thought it was somebody playing a joke on me. He calls back. He was like, no, this is really Derek Horn. I'm calling. Wow. I was like, oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. I stepped out of the auction, and I'm on the phone with him, and he was like, yeah, we're calling. We luckily somebody dropped off, and we want to bring in 4 guys, and you know, you're that 4th. I was like, man, I would love to. How soon do I have? Because like I said, I wasn't, you know, didn't have anything. He was like, well, we'll put something together. I have a secretary call you. And probably in the next 3 days, we're going to fly you down for the interview. I said, 3 days? No problem. I'll be there. So I'm up for 2 days straight trying to make sure I got everything together. I'm getting myself prepared for the interview. At that time, no clue of portfolio wasn't done because, like I said, I wasn't expecting. I just sent my resume and I thought once Jason said it was no chance, it was no chance. But it's just amazing how God works. And it doesn't really matter what a lot of folks think. And when God knows what he wants to put you in a situation, hey, you got to be ready for it and be ready to step into it.
No question. So when you hung up the phone, did your player, had he already bought a car? Like he came back in the auction and
no, he was still in there. He was in there for another 2 hours. At that time, my mind was totally away from him and trying to buy a car. I'm like, I got to get ready. That's
funny. Okay. And so you really did an amazing job at Alcorn State. And you were, I mean, like I said, you were in every gym. You had your whole staff. You know how like sometimes you go to AAU events and there's like a high major staff brings their entire coaching staff to sit courtside for a game. And you see this kid and it's like a 5-star kid you guys were doing that like for like JUCO practices in the state, you know, like you recruited the state of Mississippi harder than really anybody. Man, I don't care what level, like you guys were out there.
Thank you. We were trying to brand the Alcorn name. You know, I told the guys, we went and got the big shirts with the big A with Alcorn going through it. We wanted the guys to really know that we were out here and we were really coming to recruit you. One of the things that I heard going into the job that Alcorn never really got out. That's what you hear about HBCUs. Like, I never see the HBCUs in the gym. And one of the things from not being in the HBCU, then being down there with Gravel Craig, we actually got out and recruited at Bethune-Cookman. And I just kind of think that myth is kind of false because HBCU coaches are in the gym. So I wanted to say everywhere we go, we're going to just bum rush the gym, bum rush the AAU events. We're going to be out there. And the crazy thing was we did that on my dime. We didn't have a recruiting budget at Alcorn when I first got there the first 2 years. Then the recruiting budget ended up being only $10,000. And $10,000 can go in a weekend in July when you're going to different gyms, flying to different events. So we just really tried to be meticulous and very calculated in where we went and how we did it. And I think it paid off for us.
Yeah, no question. And the success you guys had, not only is it a difficult job, but to take over a program with APR, in an APR situation, which I've experienced, like it's hard. It's hard to convince kids to come play and tell them, hey, by the way, like you're not going to play in the postseason, but we still really want you. How did you get it turned around? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I went through that before when I first took the job at Kennesaw. We were going through the reclassification period where we from Division II to Division I, you had that 4-year reclassification period. So it was something that I had experienced for 4 years doing it that way. But when I took the job at Alcorn, it was like, okay, people were saying, man, I wouldn't take that job, Tez. Man, they got APR problems out the wazoo. It could be a career suicide. I was like, man, this is me. I mean, what other options do you have to be a Division I head coach? And I'm coming from another HBCU. So I was like, I'm taking it. And, for me, I really believe there's no such thing as a bad job. I just think you got to get in there and you got to work it and work the angles a little bit different than most people do it. And you're going into a situation where it's tough and you think you can do the conventional ways, you're out your mind. So, and that was one of the reasons why we bum rushed. We bum rush recruited. We came in there deep, all three of the assistants and myself, and we went everywhere. We traveled around just doing it that way.
What other like unconventional things did you do other than recruiting that you think really helped, drive success there?
Well, one of the things we really had to do was just get our niche. What were we trying to sell? We knew location was not one we could sell at Alcorn because you're in Lorman, Mississippi. It was nothing down there. The closest Walmart is 45 miles away. So we want to know. So it wasn't going to be location. It wasn't going to be facilities. So our biggest sales point, we want to make sure we're going to be a family program. We're going to recruit and we're selling family from day one. And so that's what we really sold. So the kids that we really went out there, we couldn't, like a lot of times people think you got to go out, you got to have 50 to 70 kids on your board when you're at a low major type of deal and to go get 4 or 5. We kind of did it the opposite way. We locked in on 10 to 15 kids and we just bum rushed those kids and really just sold family, the family atmosphere. And down they call it the reservation, down on Alcorn on the reservation, man, it's a great family atmosphere. They really look out for you and they really take care of their student athletes. So that part was a plus for any coach to come in and the people really selling family. So they were selling it right along with us. So we went out there that way. The recruiting, we made sure we focused on certain kids that were looking for the same type of things that we were looking for. And a lot of times you can't just look at their ability on the court. You got to look at what are their goals. And when you're trying to build a program, you got to get kids that's going to stick to it. And when you're trying to change the academic culture, at that time, Alcorn had no kids to graduate since 2007. And I took the job in 2015. It was just a continuance of just kids coming in to play and leaving and not staying. So we wanted to make sure those kids lined up with the academic philosophies they wanted to graduate for first and foremost. So we just went out to kids a little bit different. And we just didn't really focus on just the basketball court. I looked at it, if I can get a kid that was a decent athlete, okay basketball player, if he stays with me for 2 to 3 years, whether we get him as a freshman or he comes in as a sophomore, by the time that junior year clicked, we'll have something there. So by just going at it that way, we were actually able to bring in 5 players that first year before coming in, and we went 13-5 in conference because we just went out to certain different kids, and we had a few holdovers that were really good.
Yeah, I mean, like I think probably some of these numbers are like going over people's head, but like 13-5 at Alcorn is really, really hard to do.
No, which they haven't done. They haven't had a winning season since 2002 when Coach Dave Whitney was there. And in the previous year, they won 3 games out of total. It was like 3-27. So to step in, first job, and going into that job, we had 8 players that was going to return. 7 of those 8 players were ineligible when I took the job May 1st. They had to go in the summer and pass 2 classes with a B or better in order to be eligible to play in the fall. That just setting the tone a little bit. And I couldn't hire a coach until July 1. So I'm in there all the first from May, June, and July. I'm doing study hall by myself with 8 guys. I'm trying to chase them down and run them down, make sure they're in here. And I mean, give credit to those guys, man. They wanted the change. They really wanted structure, discipline. They wanted somebody to hold them accountable. So we were able to maintain. One of the guys ended up transferred. Lee Antoine Luckett ended up transferring to La Tech after he got eligible. So we were able to keep 7 of those 8 guys.
Yeah, hard to do in today's day with the way transfers are going and things like that.
Most definitely. So I
did
brought
you
in.
get any?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I ended up bringing in 5 guys to go along with those 7. We had one we didn't use. We only had. Let me set the tone back. We only had 11 scholarships because the NCAA had taken 2 of them. So I ended up bringing in 4 guys and 2 walk-ons to merge that team. So for the first 2 years at Alcorn, I only had 11 scholarships.
Can you talk about APR for a second? And because we went through APR issues at SEMO, and my impression, I thought it was an unfair system. I understand the intention behind it is good, and it's trying to hold schools accountable to making sure that their student athletes graduate, which I'm all for. But the way that I think it's a little antiquated, especially with the transfer trends in the country. You get punished, you lose APR points for people transferring out of your program. Well, then you get a postseason ban, and everyone wants to leave. Like, people don't want to stay in your program if they can't play in the postseason, and you get punished even more. And it's like this never-ending cycle. So I think it's a little outdated, and I think it's a little tilted to keep programs down. Like, it's really hard to climb out of that hole. Did you have any of the same impressions, or what were your thoughts on APR in general?
I thought that, when you look at it, just what they're trying to do, it's a good idea, but it was badly kind of put together, I would say, because in the case of Alcorn, guys coming in, you just recruiting guys and you're not holding them accountable and they're leaving. But in a lot of cases, you had some coaches during that APR cycle from 2005, I think, when it originated all the way to now, that they were really pushing for guys to graduate. Really, it's hard. Everybody don't want to graduate. I'll say it like that. All the kids don't really want to graduate, and you can have in your attention to push a kid. You're going to. We're talking academics, but just some of these kids really don't want to graduate. They just want to play ball. So I think it really has started to hold the coaches accountable to make sure they're recruiting just not the basketball aspect, but the student part of things. So it made us better from that side of things, where we really had to be meticulous on how we went out and recruited certain guys. But I just think I agree with you when you say it's not really set for the programs, and definitely for the lower level programs, because we don't have the big, huge budgets that some of the high majors or the mid majors, or even some of the low majors that has great budgets, that the academic staff. When I got to Alcorn only had one academic person. It was a compliance officer, and it was the academic person handling the academics. Didn't have any grad assistants, didn't really have the academic success, the part of things set up. So it was, if you wanted some success in your program, your coaches were going to have to be in detailed and dialed in on it, because you didn't really have any outside help from that side of things. So I just think it's really hard. Like you said, if a kid, then way they set the thing up with you got to have a 2.6 or higher. some kids are just not, they're just average students, and they're going to just have, not to say a 2.3 or a 2.0 is bad. It's passing. So everybody's not going to be a 3.0 student to say, Then the way they set it up with the freshman, in order for a freshman to transfer, he has to have a 3.2. Well, the kid didn't have a 3.2 when he came into the university. So how in his freshman year you're going to expect the kid to have a 3.2 when he wants to transfer? And it's nothing really to keep those kids there. If the kid is passing, he hasn't failed the course. He probably didn't have any B's, but he had all C's. And there's nothing wrong with getting C's. He's just he's an average student that passes classes. And you're going to say you're going to hold a kid from transferring? The kid is not going to hold if he don't like what's going on in that program. And sometimes it could be playing time. It could be a coaching staff, a coach that recruited him when he came in had left. He didn't like that situation. Or it could be just something he didn't see the whole aspect of the university, something about it he didn't like. So after being there for 6 months or a year, it's not comfortable for it. Then with the mental aspect of the whole thing of what's going on in these days and time, kids are going through mental health issues. So that may force them to transfer. It just, the way they set it up, it was really just difficult. And but for the most part, and that, to say the least, that's been my niche. From the Kennesaw days to the Bethune-Cookman to the Alcorn, I've always been that guy who understood the APR. How can I keep these guys? How can I graduate these guys? What do I need to do to keep them eligible, and going about the ways of doing those things? So I've been blessed. In 20 years, I've only had 3 kids not to graduate. As a head coach, every kid that's came through my program and went through have graduated. I'm at 100% graduation ratio. So been very proud of those things right there. So that's been my little niche inside of the recruiting and the coaching side of things. I always focus on the academics because I come from a single parent home, and my mom said, no matter what, you're going to get a degree. And I'm not going to let you go play pro if you got the opportunity, because you didn't bring that degree home. So, and that's been one of the things that I've always said, I'm going to hold these kids accountable on that side of things to make sure they get their degree.
Amazing. And that's what really matters. Forget the game. That's how you change lives, is you make sure people leave with a degree.
Most definitely.
And I know, say what you can about this. I know it's probably a touchy subject, but did you get any indication as to why your contract wasn't renewed with all the success you guys had there?
Man, actually, it was crazy. We had just got through playing Jackson State in the conference tournament. So leading up into that, I was talking to Bobby Champagne. He was working with the CIT at that time, and he was like, Tez, we're going to try. Right now, you're a lock to be in, because you're over 500. A couple games at that point, you're 2 games over 500, so you're going to be good. You're locked to be in, and we want to set you guys up with the John McClendon Classic. We're trying to get Tennessee State and you guys to play against each other in that first round of CIT, something that hasn't been done, and we want to give honor to John McClendon from that aspect. So I was excited. So had just spoke with my agent, and we were preparing some notes for contract extension, And at this time, the president was when I first took the job was Alfred Rankins. His thing was every 2 years he would evaluate. If on that second year of evaluation, win the season, he would give you a 2-year extension. New president comes in my last year of the and Dr. Rankin takes over as the president of presidents. He's over the Mississippi system of presidents. So we really thought going into it. I'm going into the meeting with the AD thinking I'm going to talk about a 2-year extension, and so I get up into the meeting, and he's sitting there, the SWA sitting there, and the director of compliance. I was like, we never had this in meetings before. So I said, well, maybe they're trying to do something different. So I sit down, I got my folder in hand, let's put it on the just some notes I want to talk about, different things I want in the contract, new contract, and different things. And he says, I don't know if it was 12 words. Coach, we're deciding to go a different direction. Thank you for your service. And he gets up and walks out. And the HR lady walks in. So he walks out. At that time, the compliance director, he looks at me and was like, wow, and shakes his head like, Coach, I had no clue. I just got called to sit in this meeting. He walks out, SWA walks out, and I'm looking back at the AD like, what in the world is going on? So she said, Coach, I was called to come up here and to give you your non-renewal paperwork. So I just sit back. I'm in awe, like in disbelief, like, hold on, we just had a winning season, finished 4th in the conference, and got invited to a postseason. And that's 3 out of 5 winning seasons, and I get let go. Wow. And so never spoke to the AD again at that point. I tried to call him because at that point, I said, okay, I sat in my car for an hour in disbelief. Like, I got to call my wife and tell them we didn't get renewed and I didn't get an extension. So got the nerves and the guts up to call my wife, and my wife she's such a champion in this aspect. She just said, okay, new chapter, let's turn the chapter in the book, and something new and God has in store for us. So when I knew that she was fine and she was cool, it was like a weight lifted off of my shoulders. I was like, okay, I can breathe now. But so on the ride home, imagine I drove 60 miles every day. I stayed in Vicksburg, all corners in Lorman. I drove 60 miles one way every day, back and forth. So a 2-way trip, 60 miles. So on that 60-mile ride home, I was like, I got to get the nerves up to call assistance because we're thinking we're going to be here for a little while longer. But I was like, I don't know what to tell them. So I tried to call the athletic director at the time and was like, didn't answer the phone. So I never spoke to him from the time he told me that. I haven't spoke to him since. So I just told the coaches, man, we didn't get renewed. And they were all like, wow, what happened? Coach, what was the reason that y'all get? I was like, guys, y'all know me. I'm not that type of guy that's a confrontational guy. I'm not going to do anything to ruffle anybody's feathers. So, and they was like, Coach, what happened? Why? And to this day, I really don't know why. 3 out of 5 winning season, 100% graduation rate, always over the national average APR. We had 2 1,000s, and we took a 4-year postseason ban, and me and Jason Cable wrote a proposal together, and we got it off in 2 years. So we went from a 4-year to a 2-year postseason ban. So I don't know. To tell you the truth, honestly, I don't know what happened during that time and why it happened. It just happened.
Unreal. I didn't know all that, Tez. Like, I've been fired before and it sucks, but most of the time you kind of know it's coming, and like, okay, we had a couple bad years, like we're on the hot seat. But what you just described, to get the rug pulled from under you, I can't imagine the feeling, that brings on.
Oh man, it sent me through just a whirl of emotions for a short period of time. My wife got me through that. Because she was so calm and relaxed, and I think she was like, we've been here before. We've done a great job financially, saving money and putting it to the side and living below our means. So she had me totally calm going through that situation. So I was really at ease, but you always have in the back of your mind the why, but I've really gotten past that why and just saying God has something in store for me a little bit better.
Okay, and you mentioned you were getting ready to go to Poland, and then Anthony Stewart, coach at UT Martin, had something come up late in August. He had an opening on his staff. You guys were able to join that staff. And then 2 months later, Coach Stewart passed. Let's talk a little bit about Anthony Stewart and the man that he was, and kind of the legacy that he leaves behind.
Oh, amazing guy, man. I think there's nobody out there who will tell you that Stu didn't keep a smile on your face. He wasn't a big jokester, but he always had those one-line little digs that will just get you like, what did you just say? And it just have you just rolling. But just amazing guy, amazing coach, amazing friend, was always about financial empowerment with his players, with his friends. he was always going to be talking about money and basketball. Those were his two favorite things. But I met Coach Stewart in 2005. Actually, my first year at Kennesaw State. We were actually, I don't know, you remember Genesis 1 in Mendenhall, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little prep school ran by Victor Evans and Artie Norris. And I had a 4-star in Markeith Cummins and Ladarius Green, who was a 3-star. And going into their senior year, I was recruiting. Markeith is actually from Birmingham. He's actually went to Arrington Middle School, and he left Birmingham, and he went to live with his dad in Savannah, Georgia. And so I had been knowing Markeith since he was a kid. And so they were down there in Ladarius. So they decided to commit to Kennesaw State. At this time, Markeith had Louisville, Miami. He was a big-time football player, throwing 95 on the baseball field from the mound. I mean, he's just an all-around superstar, 4-star basketball player. Ladarius had, from his freshman to his sophomore year, he was 6'2" point guard. He grew 7 inches within between sophomore year and junior year, and he was 6'11" stud that can play 1 through 4. So they had fell short on their ACT scores by 1 point, and I put them in prep school in Mendenhall, Mississippi. Met Victor Evans recruiting. They were playing a tournament at Life College, a little prep school tournament. And I told him, I said, I got 2 guys I want to place with you, and he was like, tell me about them. So he did a little research. He was like, no problem. I'll take them. So at that time, Genesis 1 was like, everybody talks about IMG and all these other prep schools. A little small town in Mendenhall, Mississippi. When you go in there, you're going to at least find 13 Division I players. And when he told you he had 13 Division I players, they were going to be there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put Ladarius and Markeith. They can play against competition, and it's going to be good. So I was down there following up with those guys, just checking on them. And Stu walks up behind me and was like, hey, man, I heard those 2 guys are yours right there. I was like, yeah, I placed them down here. He was like, yeah, you might have placed them, but you ain't got them no more. He's like, man, you see all these dudes in here? You had Oklahoma, Louisville. He was like, man, and every time I talk to one, they asking about your 2 boys. He's like, you ain't keeping them. I was like, man, I got them. He was like, you're not going to keep them. I said, watch, I'm going to keep them. So he didn't know me from Adam. He didn't know me at all. So he's like, I'm going to help you out, young fella. And at that time, I'm just getting nervous because that's my first time coaching Division I. I really had these 2 kids in Kennesaw State getting a 4-star and 3-star at that time on the transition was unheard of. Nobody was like, Kennesaw, how did y'all get them boys? So, they couldn't say we dropped the bag because the bag wasn't at Kennesaw. So they was like, you're not going to keep those guys. So we went to the little catfish spot right off of 55, a little globe, little catfish spot, Catfish Den, I think it's what it's called in Mississippi. And we sit down and we ate. And he was just telling me some little recruiting, little nuggets and different things I can use, what I need to do to make sure I'm staying on those guys, and really just refreshing my recruiting chops and helping me out and making sure that I was doing the right thing. So from that point on in 2005 to his death in November 2020, we became really close friends and even best friends. And we talked every night because he was a guy like me who really didn't sleep a lot. We would be up in the middle of the night talking to 2 and 3 in the morning. And the day before he passed, we were actually on the phone at like 2:30 that morning talking and just doing what we normally do, just shooting it up and just really just talking and throwing jokes at each other at about 2:30 that morning. And he was, he always used to call. He was like, all right, coach, this business. We talking basketball. So we would just, okay, we get serious on the phone and just talk basketball. But if he didn't call and say basketball, we're going to just be friends and just, just talk and just joke and, just talk about life, talk about money and different things like that. So we were just, at that point, we were just talking about some money, some different investments, some different business ventures that he was trying to explore. And And from those things, I was asking some questions about it because he was really big on the financial side of things and starting up businesses and different things. So, and that was my last time speaking to him was that night. And normally on Sundays, he was like, "Man, I'm not gonna bother you on Sundays. I know you got the family with my 2 young kids and the wife." He's like, "We ain't gonna talk on Sundays unless it's really an emergency." So that Sunday morning about 2:30, that was my last time speaking to Stu.
Wow. And no indication of him like feeling ill or anything like that. It was just sudden.
No, the crazy thing was Coach Walker, DeAndre Walker, spoke to him about 8:00 that morning. His wife was in the kitchen with him cooking waffles at about 10:00 that morning. Then his son talked to him. Parker talked to him on the phone about 11:00 that morning. So then come to find out, Jeff Goodman said he spoke to him about 12. So in between 12 and 3:00, he passed in between that time. But he had just had a physical, I think in July, and he got a clean bill of health. You know, we at this time we're in the pandemic, we're taking corona tests, and we had at that time he had taken 6. We had 6 negative tests, so he never had had COVID. So it was just shocking to us all about it. How he just passed. Just God, it was time for him. God wanted to call him home.
Yeah, absolutely. Just tragic though. And the basketball stuff aside, I mean, well, let me talk about the basketball stuff. Great coach, and UT Martin, not an easy job, and he was winning OVC West championships there, which just tells you like how good of a coach, how good of a recruiter he was. But that stuff aside, like you said, just one of the nicest people. Will talk to anybody, no ego.
Not at all.
Talk to you no matter who you are. Like treated everybody with respect. My wife, like we were in the OVC tournament at one point, and you know how it is. You're in the hotel in the lobby. All the teams are staying there, and my wife had to run up and get something from the room. I'm sitting down in the lobby waiting for her, and she comes down the elevator with Stu, like talking to Stu, like, "Oh, I just met this coach. Like he's the nicest guy." He doesn't know who my wife is, or but that's just the kind of guy he was. Just friendly, treated everybody with respect, and really just a tragic loss. But he leaves behind a unbelievable legacy with all the young men that he helped and all the lives he touched.
Most definitely. Great guy. And I think that's part of one of the things that I thought he did a great job with young coaches. And like you said, he was just so open to talk to them. And I remember coming up and like I was in all of Big John Thompson, Nolan Richardson, and Jerry Tarkanian. And so when I saw those guys at Final Fours, I was like, man, I want to go say hi, but I don't want to bother them, And, I think a lot of times, you have these young coaches coming up and they're like I was a little bit afraid to go talk to coaches because they're not as open and friendly as they should be. And it's like it really should be like one big happy family. But Stu wasn't like that. He didn't let the quote unquote, when he was at the high majors and when he became a head coach, he didn't let his title or his status phase him as a man and as a person and being open and friendly. And that was something that was huge. And I really appreciate that as a young coach when he first met me, taking time out to pull me aside and talk to me about recruiting, how to make sure I'm keeping guys and not losing them to the bigger schools. And, I really appreciated that. And that meant a lot to me. And that really is one of the things that I really love about him most is just his genuineness as a person, as a man. Like you said, aside of the basketball things.
Absolutely. So how do you go from that, just that all of a sudden passing of your one of your closest friends, the leader of the program, to now, I imagine you got to go address the team. You probably got a game you got to get ready for. Like, how do you even begin to handle a situation like that?
Man, first I'm gonna say the man upstairs did a lot of praying and trying to get the words to say, because that night, right when it happened, we called the team and I had to go get to myself for a second to gather myself, to get my emotions in check. and asked the man upstairs to help me lead these guys and talk to them. At that time, I wasn't the interim coach. I was just the top assistant, and I wanted to be able just to go in and just talk to them and just let them know that we just lost a friend, a mentor, a head coach, and that was the hardest thing I've to this point in my life I would think I've ever had to do. And it could be some other things, but I think because it was, you've seen stuff in the past, and it's been something that you can it's an example set for you to know, okay, this guy did it this way in the past, and there was no example for that. There's no like book that you can go reflect on to tell a coach on how to go to those kids and tell them that the head coach just passed, and right before the season, 2 weeks before the season, 3 weeks before the season started. And that was one of the hardest things. And we're there. Chancellor is there, the AD's there, a lot of the administration and the coaches there, and guys, they see everybody coming in, and they're in the bleachers at that time. We're still having to go through COVID protocols, spacing them out, and my eyes, while I'm telling the guys space out, my eyes is just getting glossy. And the more and more I'm talking to them, the more my emotions start to check in. And that was tough, man. That was a tough part to tell them that we just lost, and I had just lost one of my best friends. And they knew going into how close me and Stu were, because we were together at work. We were going to eat lunch, and when I got there, Coach Stu kind of like let the rings go, and because normally he would be the one really getting on them a lot and stuff like that. So he was like, Coach, Ted's just, you take the discipline, the defense, and you just get into them, and we got to change the culture from that side of things, and we got to get better defensively. And so they knew, like, the guys that was there, like the 4 or 5 guys that was returning from the previous team, like, Coach is letting this new guy do all this. Oh, he must trust him, So it was tough, and they knew when they saw me just so emotional, something had happened, and to tell them that Stu passed, man, it was really tough. They took it hard.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about the COVID part of it, but like, not that I've been through a situation like this, but anytime you do deal with death, you just want to be close to people. You want to hug people, and to not even have that luxury, or comfort, makes it, salt on the wound or whatever. How did you guys get through the season?
Well, from there, it was, and the crazy thing was somebody that from the administration, or I don't know who it was, ended up having COVID that night. So we from that point on, the outlet that the guys needed to have, which is basketball, they had to go and be alone in their rooms by themselves in quarantine, going through the death of their coach. So we did a lot of Zoom calls from that time leading up until where we could hit the court again. But like you said, you just lost somebody. You want to be able to be physical, touch them. You want to have that outlet, get to the gym, sometimes late at night when you can't sleep, to get some shots up, just to go in there and be able to yell and just let some of that frustration out. So we were on 2-week quarantine leading up until the first game of the season. So we stepped into the game against Evansville with a day and a half to practice, and haven't been on the court in 2 days. But like we really did a good job of Zooming. We would really get the guys after we went through tests. Nobody tested positive. But they still had to do the quarantine. We would just have each guy had a time within that day where they had to get out and do some light jogging. We took weights over to their rooms, where each guy had a set of dumbbells. So we took a jump rope, some different things like that to try to keep them in shape as much as possible by doing the exercise and keeping their body fresh. But 2 days, really a day and a half out before we played Evansville, and we actually went into that game and beat them in overtime. And we haven't beat that was 2 out of 12 opportunities. I think they were 1-11 against Evansville leading up into that game. So the guys really want to go out and play and win that game for Coach Stu.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a very emotional locker room after the game.
Then after that game, right after that game, you know, it was emotional in the locker room. And the next day, Parker comes in and was like, "Coach, I can't be here." And we were like,
his son, Coach Stewart's son, that was on the team.
You know, he was like, "Coach, I can't do it." He's like, "I tried," and you know, because he didn't play in that first game. He didn't play. He had just like 3 weeks maybe three, right before his dad passed. He had a bad ankle injury, so he didn't play. He hadn't practiced, so he was like, he was there on the bench with us that night, and he was like, "Coach, I just can't do it." You know, it's so many memories about this building, this university, and everything that reminds me of my pop, and it's just tough for me to be here right now. So, you know, and we just said, Parker, you know, take all the time you need, whatever you need, whatever we can do to help, you know, making some calls to some different places. And I mean, give credit to Parker, man. I mean, he's an amazing dude. This dude graduated with a master's degree, MBA, in 3 years. But he just couldn't take the grief and emotions and being around and seeing everything, Martin, Tennessee. So he ended up transferring out. So you lose your best player going into that, didn't play that game. You lose your best player. Then some other little discipline things, had to kick off 6 guys throughout the year, and more COVID shutdowns. And we went into the SEMO game, your old stomach ground. We went into the SEMO game with 6 players, man. In the first conference game, we went into it with them with 6 players. And the rule was, which I maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure, but I thought you had to have 7 scholarship players who didn't have COVID and that had to play. So we had 6, and one of those guys were a walk-on. So we went in that game. We ended up being SEMO. We swept SEMO this season. We beat Austin Peay, which hasn't been done in a while here at UT Martin. We swept Eastern Illinois. We actually were 1 game away from getting to the tournament. Cam Holden, who's a first-team all-conference player for us this year, his grandmother passed. So you're dealing with his kid's grandmother passing, and he wasn't able to play in the SIUE game. He averaged 15 and 9, and we ended up losing the game by 12 or 13. And I really, really felt if he would have been there, we'd have won that game. And he comes back for the EIU game on Saturday from the funeral. He just comes right in from the funeral. He has 27 and 9. So we really felt like we would have made the conference tournament. And I mean, just with everything that was going on, the COVID, the deaths of family members, the discipline things that we had to do. I mean, I thought we really overachieved this year. We had a great year with everything. And you know, I'm watching the tournament. I'm hearing people that's in the Big Dance March Madness talking about the COVID, how difficult it was for their kids mentally and different things. And I'm just like, man, just you guys have no idea what difficult is when you speak of a season in this pandemic and losing a coach. Only team I think that can relate to us even in any facet would be when Coach Lou Hill passed down at Rio Grande Valley this season. That was hard for the players.
I was just going to ask you that. Have you talked to Jay over there at Rio Grande? Like, have you guys talked to that staff at all?
No, I didn't. I knew Lou. I didn't know any of the other staff members. Didn't, you know, during that time with different things that I really haven't had a chance to, and that's on me. I just haven't had a chance to reach out to those guys and to talk to them. And I wish I would have did a better job with that. And maybe at some point I'll get a chance to talk to Jay and some of those guys and we just go through and grieve a little bit of what we had to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. Just tragic to lose anybody like that, but to lose two coaches in the same season at such a young age, you know, that were doing so many great things for their program, for their athletes. And 2 minority coaches that were, you know,
they were really on the rise.
A blazing example. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And then also I lost during this time. Also, I'm going through the loss of Stu. I lose one of my biggest mentors, the guy that gave me my first opportunity on the Division I level, who I talked to, if not weekly, we were going to talk at some point, weekly or bi-weekly, was Tony Engel. He dies of COVID. during this whole thing of going through this season. So for me, man, it's been emotional drain on me this year. It's
Yeah, I'm sorry.
it's really been tough.
I can only imagine, man. It's been a crazy 12 months for you, and I'm sorry for your losses. And this is secondary, but I wish you would have gotten a chance to stay on there at UT Martin as the head coach. Of course, it's secondary to everything else
Yeah,
you're dealing with, but it would have been
man,
nice.
we felt pretty good about it. We actually thought that we had a shot. Going. I was talking to Kurt, the AD, the whole time throughout the year, and he was just like, just keep this team together. Let's get us through the season, win as many games as possible. And we actually won more games in conference than we did the previous year, than in the year before that. So I just thought like the little small nuggets that we were achieving uphill was enough, and we were really setting forth. I thought the academics, we had a 2.9 GPA in the fall, dealing with losing coach and everything like that, and going through those different stoppages. Academics in the spring, leading up until this point, was going pretty good. We were a game away from winning, getting into the conference tournament. I thought we did enough, and it was kind of like, you always have to feel like going into it's like, well, I'm going to have to open it up. We really want to see what's out there, and at that point, it was like, So it kind of like it puts a shade, a cloud over your sunny day when you tell them you're gonna open it up. But we
Right.
kept pushing, we kept working. We won, I think, 4 out of the last 6. We won 4 out of the last 6 games. So through all of that, we were pushing. The staff was. I told Coach Stu before he passed, I said, man, you put together an amazing staff. These other guys that are on the staff were good guys, great coaches, and DeAndre Walker and Zach Carpenter and Jackson Hazlett and all of the grad assistants. He had a great group of people here. So it made it easy for me when I stepped in, because these guys really, they knew their craft. They really worked hard. Great. I thought we put together some great scouting reports, and it was no way we should have, when you got 3 walk-ons in your top 8 rotation and you starting to walk on, it's no way we should have won some of the games that we won. And I give that credit to the coaches and the coaching staff and these kids of really putting together a good game plan, and the kids going out and executing the game plan that the staff is putting in place for them. And I thought the interview, I got an interview. I thought the interview went amazing. And I thought I did a great job. And, it's something like, I help other coaches through interview process. That's one of the things that me and my wife, we have a little a group where we talk to coaches, and my wife does portfolios, resumes, and different things for coaches, and preparing them to get those guys ready for the interview process. So I always look at, if I get to the table in an interview process, I feel pretty good about myself. I can talk with the best of them, and I think the things that we had did leading up into the interview was enough.
Yeah.
So it was
you mentioned this. Absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned the staff, and like Zach Carpenter, DeAndre Walker, those guys have been on, just to have that continuity. They've been there several years, and you don't see that. Usually there's so much turnover in our business, and especially, jobs like in the OVC that, there tends to be a lot more turnover. But just the fact that there was that continuity just shows the atmosphere that Coach Stu had built, and then you continued that family atmosphere. And again, I'm sorry it didn't work out, but like you said earlier, everything happens for a reason. God has a plan, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you land next in your coaching career. I know you're just at the beginning of your journey.
I'm ready for the page to turn, and hey, it's just, hey man, I walk with God, and wherever He places me, I know it'll be for a great reason. And at the end of the day, nobody cares when you get to those pearly gates. God is not going to ask us how many games we won and how many shots we made. It's going to be how many lives that we touched and saved. And that's where I'm at in this journey of mine. Just every place to see if I could touch a life. And if I touch multiple, it's a blessing to me.
Absolutely. Well, Tez, I appreciate you coming on. I know this wasn't the easiest conversation to have, but I appreciate you being so open about it, and hopefully it puts um, things in perspective. It's so easy to get caught up in this business and recruiting, and there's always something, and it's a rat race, and it's competitive, but it really is secondary to the important things in life, being around your loved ones, impacting lives, like you said. So hopefully this serves as a good reminder of that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to get on here and just to give my life story of coaching, and hopefully it eases the next guy who's going through this situation a little bit, and it helps them. And guys, if I know this is live, I'm an open book. If anybody have any questions or want to talk, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm this. This is my number, 770-862-8563. Don't hesitate to reach out and give me a call if you got any questions, or young coaches out there, you want some advice or anything I can do to help. I want to help.
Thanks so much, Tez. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Adam.